Number 7, Warriors in Jesus' name. Chapter 4. His eyes flew up to hers as if making sure he'd heard her correctly. Damn, Joey swore. Where's your bedroom? Through the dining room, upstairs to the left. He lifted her. She wrapped her legs around his waist. Now, she said. He got as far as the dining room, stopped, and eased her onto the table. He took a step back, and then 2 more. What are you doing? Chest heaving, he gazed down at the most incredibly beautiful sight he'd ever seen. Breeze, eyes dark with passion, and also a little bit aggravated. He couldn't help it. He had to smile. He knew immediately it would make her mad. I'm sorry, he said quickly. Breeze couldn't believe what was happening. She'd been willing to give herself to this man. And now he was turning her down, after it was him who'd started it in the first place. Trying to recover some dignity, she sat up straight and smoothed her hair. He advanced again, took her face in his hands, leaned forward, and rested his forehead on hers, waiting for his breathing to return to normal. All the reasons why he shouldn't take her scrolled through his brain in bright neon. Forget the fact that she'd wanted him too. She was a client. Period. More, though, was his relationship with Jesus Christ. Didn't he just kneel down in morning prayer a few hours ago and ask for protection for his family, healing for Eric, and guidance for himself? What would he say this evening? He blew out a breath. Maybe it was the Lord's guidance that somehow gave him the strength to stop. He'd never felt such an attraction, such an irresistible pull from any woman he'd ever known. If anyone had told him he'd put his own job in jeopardy out of lust for a good-looking woman, he would have told them that they were crazy. Slowly, he pulled himself away and gazed down at her. She smiled up at him, so he guessed she was no longer angry. His heart did a somersault. Well now, she said sweetly. That was interesting. His eyes blinked. A muscle hardened in his jaw because he was realizing it was much more than interesting. Stepping back a few more steps, he held out a hand to pull her off the table. Are you okay? She frowned. Wow. You're not going to do that macho, I shouldn't have taken advantage of you thing, are you? Giving a slight smile, he shook his head. I guess I'm not, even though I do feel guilty. He stepped forward again, pulled her against his chest. She nestled there a minute, enjoying his masculine scent, reveling in his strength, and listening to the sound of his steady heartbeat. He lifted her face and placed a chaste kiss on her mouth. She murmured, you are amazing. Now he frowned. And you're not going to do that, guess I'd better stroke the male ego kind of thing, are you? Amused, she shook her head. No. Heaven knows you don't need it. Sighing, she pushed him away. So, let's do this again sometime. Maybe next time we'll make it upstairs. Joey didn't like the casual sound of her statement. There was nothing casual or mundane about what is happening between them. That she was attempting to make it seem that way pissed him off, and he gently placed his hands on her shoulders. We'll just see what happens, he answered. He gave a heavy sigh, leaned his forehead against hers again. I hate to say this, but I have to leave. She lifted her face to offer him a kiss goodbye, and just to keep her off kilter or possibly to make a statement, he cradled her face in his hands, tilted her head down, and gently kissed her forehead. What statement he attempted to make, he wasn't sure. In his mind, a kiss on the forehead showed affection, care, and concern for someone, which he thought might take away the feeling of slam, bam, thank you, ma'am. No matter what she wanted to think, this was not and will not become just a casual fling. Bree Sheridan and Joey Adams were gonna have a relationship, a real relationship. What they were not gonna do was have mind-numbing sex and then go on their merry, separate ways. New scene. He'd watched her come into the studio, laughing with Logan, mussing his hair. He figured she was probably trying to lighten his mood and get rid of his nerves. She was selfless, this beautiful, sweet woman, and the thought of sniveling Gordon Landau, striking her and causing her fear and pain, made Mark want to kill the man. Logan, too, was a victim, Mark thought, seeing the man who was supposed to take care of his mother and him do the things he'd seen. What must that do to a young boy? Mark sighed. His own father had been cruel to his mother at one point. Somewhere in the recesses of his mind, he'd known that. He hadn't struck her, but he'd yelled at her and made her cry, and Mark remembered the feeling of helplessness. He'd been 6 years old when his parents split, but he'd been aware that there was a problem. Funny how he'd wiped those memories from his mind, forgiven his father, loved him, and that is because the man is my father, Mark thought. And that's simply what a son did. You loved your father. How torn Logan must feel, wanting to love his own father and hating what the man did to his mother. Logan turned and smiled at him, and Mark's heart filled with compassion for the boy. Bella smacked Logan on the rear and pointed to the dressing room, then turned and approached, an exquisite and rare smile on her face. "Hi," she said. "Hi. Is Logan still nervous?" "He couldn't even eat breakfast," she answered, her hands twisting together. "And looks like Mom is just as nervous," Mark said, nodding toward her balled fists. "Huh?" She glanced down. Smiling, she rubbed her hands against her hips. "I guess I am. I think it's contagious. He'll do fine. He's actually really good." "Well, it means a lot to him." "And so when are you going to test and move up to green?" She shrugged. "I don't know. There's a lot going on right now. It's sort of hard to concentrate." He nodded, realizing that more than anything he wanted to take her in his arms and comfort her. "I understand," he said softly. He glanced past her to see Master Kane and Grandmaster Keno walk through the doors. He smiled at his stepfather as he approached. "Hello, Mark," Eric Keno said, offering a slight bow. Mark bowed. "Sir," Mark said, then turned and offered the same to Master Kane. "Master Adams," Master Kane said, then turned toward Bella with a bow, and Bella bowed. "This is Bella Landau," Mark said to his stepfather. "She's a member of the class, but it's her son Logan who's testing today." "Logan, who was at the hospital the other night, correct?" Eric asked. "Yes, sir," Bella answered as she bowed. "Grandmaster Keno, it's an honor to meet you." "And you," he said kindly, looking deeply into her eyes, having a strong sense of déjà vu and an immediate urge to comfort and protect. "I hear Eric is doing better," Bella said. "I'm so glad he's going to be okay." "Thank you," Eric said kindly, unable to take his eyes from hers. So where do we sit to watch?" Bella asked. "Let me escort you," Master Kane said as he motioned toward some chairs lined up against the mirrors. Bella bowed again and left the group as Eric watched her leave. "Interesting woman," he said quietly to Mark. Mark's eyes followed her. Yes, she is." Eric's eyebrows rose. "I see." Mark shook his head. "No, she's married." "Not happily, I'd venture to say." "Why would you say that?" Mark asked. "Her eyes are sad. They remind me of someone." Mark searched his face. He'd grown up with this man, and they were close, but they'd never talked about Mark's father's indiscretion with his mom, which he supposed was as it should be. Mark loved Eric, and he was grateful to him. He'd come along and made his mother happy. He'd taken care of her, nurtured her, supported her in every endeavor, and loved her to distraction. What more could a son ask from a stepfather? Sighing, Mark nodded. "I'm trying to help her. She's a victim of domestic violence." "We are only victims if we allow ourselves to be." Mark nodded. He'd heard that phrase spoken by Eric many times over the years. "Well, I think she believes that staying in that situation is her only choice. I'm going to try to talk some sense into her today at the belt party if I can find some time alone with her. She needs to know that she doesn't have to take the abuse her husband dishes out. She has options. If she realizes that, maybe she'll choose differently." "Are you sure about this abuse?" "Positive. I'd know just from her demeanor and the bruises, but Joey is assigned to the case and he confirms it." "The case?" Jason has a case open on Bella. Her sister went to Ameritech for help. Bella's husband is a big, high-powered attorney and has threatened to take Logan from her if she tries to leave him. So she feels like she's trapped. I want to convince her that she has a support system and she can get out, especially now that Joey's been gathering evidence of this abuse. Has her husband hurt Logan? Not yet. That doesn't mean it won't happen, Mark snapped. Eric eyed the tall young man. You're emotionally involved. It was a statement, not a question. Yes, sir, I am. You have feelings for her. Does she return them? As I said, she's married. That wasn't my question. Mark looked away toward the woman they spoke of, then back at Eric. It's hard to tell, but there is definitely a chemistry between us. Eric nodded. Her emotional state is going to be precarious at best, and she'll need a strong shoulder as she goes through the extraction and then the healing process. Well, I can offer that. Eric put his hand on Mark's shoulder and squeezed. I know that. I'll help you any way I can. Mark nodded. I know that. Thanks. Well, let's get this thing going. There's a party waiting, and your mom wants me back as soon as possible to help out. Well, what's she all strung out about? I mean, there's only like 10 kids, right? Oh, your son invited one more here and one more there, and it's turned into more like 20 kids and their parents. Mark grinned. I bet Mom is freaking. Okay, let's get this show on the road. Eric presided while Master Kane brought his class to order. This particular martial arts school was owned by the Kinos and run by Master Kane. Mark himself, a master as a 5th Dan black belt, taught on Saturdays while Master Kane taught all weekday classes. It was a good arrangement, and it helped out Master Kane so he could keep his weekends free, and it kept Mark up to speed while he worked on establishing a successful law practice. The students loved Mark, too. He was kind, laid back, and yet they'd seen him fight enough to know he was extremely lethal, so he had their respect. Even though Mark was the stepson of Grandmaster Kino, he acted only as Master Kane's assistant, as was his role in this particular school. To be promoted within a Kino martial arts school was a big deal. The Kinos were legendary across the country. Everyone knew Grandmaster Eric Kino never let anyone advance without deserving it, which was not always the case in other martial arts schools. He demanded perfection from his schools and their students. Another reason for the legend was the fact that Grandmaster Kino's son was the famous movie martial artist, Ricky Kino, who married his own stepsister, the famous actress Brianna Adams. Father and son had married mother and daughter. Ricky Kino's martial arts talent had been put into question once by an emboldened paparazzo who challenged Ricky to fight 5 selected real martial artists in one night. Ricky accepted the challenge, and it turned into a huge charity event with all proceeds going to what is now called the Heal the World Foundation, a charity his little sister Jeffy had established. The world went crazy for Ricky when he beat all 5 challengers, an unheard of feat, and since then the Kino Challenge had been fought yearly. In subsequent bouts, though, Ricky lessened his role in the challenge and fought only 3 opponents, and for 5 years they'd brought in a second fighter from the Kino schools to fight the other 2 opponents. One year, that second fighter role was fulfilled by 7th Dan, Joey Adams, stepbrother Ricky and little brother to Mark. The younger man's popularity made him an immediate hit, and finally Ricky retired and Joey moved up to take his place. The second fighter is chosen yearly from one of the Kino schools, which made for a huge influx of students, all wanting to be the one chosen to fight in a Kino challenge. To be fair, the Kino schools sponsored tournaments, local, state, regional, semifinals, and the championship to determine the man who would fight in the challenge. Again, all this revenue went to Heal the World Foundation. Because of the Kino Challenge, the Kino Empire, a large conglomerate in the first place, had doubled. Master Kane's school was one of over 400. Today, 8 students tested, 4 boys, 2 girls, 1 man, and 1 woman. The highest rank being sought today was red belt by Logan and one of the girls. Though today was not a black belt test, it was treated as very important, and it was to the ones being tested. Near the end of the testing, each student was interviewed to determine where their mind was at in conjunction with martial arts. Being a devout Christian, it was important to Grandmaster Kino that integrity and honesty be an integral part of the martial artists that his school produced. During the testing, Mark's eyes had continually strayed to Bella, and now, while Master Kane and Eric handled the interviews, and he waited quietly along with everyone else, he allowed himself to look his fill. Chewing on her lower lip, she smoothed her hair back from her face and rocked back and forth in her chair. She wore a flowing floral skirt with ruffles at the hem. Not flamboyant or sexy, it came to around mid-calf. So why did she look good enough to eat? She had on flat sandals and a white gauzy blouse, and to him she looked like an angel. Her hair was down from her usual ponytail. She'd parted the straight black tresses on the side and brushed them out of her face, but they kept falling forward. Mark had a sudden vision of those same black locks falling around his face as she leaned forward over him. "Master Mark," Master Kane said loudly. Mark snapped to, swallowing hard as he pulled himself from the erotic scene. Mark looked at him, questioning. "I'm sorry?" "Did you have any words to say to the class before we dismiss?" Mark stood and gave a short speech about working hard on their own time and never giving up. A few minutes later, Master Kane dismissed the class, telling them that they will know if they'd been promoted within a few days at most. "It's time to party," Jojo exclaimed as the kids and parents laughed. Jojo approached Logan and playfully put him into a headlock. "You did great, Logan. How's it feel to be a red belt?" "I don't know if I made it yet," Logan said cautiously. "Trust me, you did," Jojo assured him. "Come on, let's get our stuff and get to the party. You want to ride with us?" "Nah, I'll ride with my mom." Jojo nodded. "That's cool. I'll see you there." New scene. Following Mark, Bella drove through the security gates and up the long, curving drive that led to the Kino mansion on the beach. The lushness of the green front lawn, along with the beautiful fall flowers. Hold on. Along with the beautiful fall flowers, combined with the large fountain, took her breath away. "Oh, look, Logan," she said, pointing toward a grouping of fiery orange mums. "It's beautiful here." Logan nodded, peering up at his mom. She was smiling and happy, and suddenly she seemed so young. "Yeah, it's cool," he answered. When the driveway split, Bella was directed toward the circle that led to the front of the house. She parked, and as she and Logan started toward the house, the door opened and a beautiful lady smiled and waved. As other cars pulled into the drive, Bella and Logan were greeted at the door. "Hi, I'm Shelley Kino," she beamed, offering her hand. "I'm Jojo's grandma and Master Mark's mother." Bella smiled and extended her hand. "Hello, Mrs. Kino. I'm Bella Landau, and this is my son, Logan." "How nice to meet you, but please, you must call me Shelley." She turned to the young man standing next to Bella. "Hi, Logan." "Hi," he said shyly. Shelley smiled up at Bella. "I met Logan last week at the hospital when Eric was hurt. I hear he's doing much better." "He is, thank goodness. He's coming today, and actually he should be here any minute." Mark and Jojo jogged up the steps. Mark kissed his mother on the cheek. "Mom," he said, "I see you've met Bella." "Yes, I have, Bella. Gordon Landau is your husband?" Shelley asked, taking note of the slight face Logan made. "Yes. Do you know him?" Bella asked. "Oh, I only know of him. He couldn't come today?" "He had a golf date with a client and then some briefs to work on." "Well, I'm certainly glad you didn't let that keep you away. You two come on in. The party will be out back. Please make yourselves at home." Bella smiled. "I'll feel so much more at home if you'll let me help." Shelley gazed into her eyes and nodded. "I can always use help. Jojo, you man the door and greet your guests." "Yes, ma'am," Jojo answered. "Logan, you want to stay with me?" "Sure." Shelley led Bella through the house. As Mark followed, they went through the dining room doors to the giant deck. She put Bella right to work, shooing Mark away. Mark knew with his mother Bella was in good hands. He worked on unfolding more tables and setting out chairs, while Bella and Shelley helped the caterers by spreading tablecloths, arranging flowers, and placing trays of food on the tables. Finished with his part, Mark stood off to the side and watched as Bella smoothed her hair back from her face. She said something to his mother which made her laugh. His mother reached up and pulled a small clasp from her own hair, and then had Bella be still while she clipped a small lock of Bella's hair back from her face. Shelley gave Bella's hair a loving pat and nodded in approval. Bella smiled at her, and Mark's heart turned over in his chest. He couldn't keep himself from watching her. She moved slowly, as if in a dream. Each movement, each gesture she made was graceful, beautiful, careful, fluid yet deliberate, gentle. That was really what it was. She was the epitome of gentleness. Suddenly, her eyes lifted and met his. Her eyebrows rose in question, and he came forward. Is something wrong? Bella asked. Not a thing, he said softly. I just want you to know that sometime today I need to talk to you. Oh, about Logan? No, but it's important. She frowned. I'm not sure that I care about you, Bella. Please, trust me. Shelley butted in before Bella could refuse. Well, Bella, did you bring a swimsuit? I'm wearing it. She tugged on the gauzy white shirt. This is actually my cover-up. Really? And this is mine, Shelley said, tugging on her own pink shirt. Let's go lose the rest of the clothes. I always like to talk one female into getting into their swimsuit the same time as me. Then I don't feel so self-conscious. Bella looked over the woman who, if she was Mark's mother, had to be in her 50s. She had a perfect figure, unlike other women her age. She had long hair, which she wore in a long braid. It appeared to be the same light brown color as Mark's, with maybe a few gray hairs mixed in. She was beautiful and could pass for 30-something easily, and Bella liked her immensely. Come on, we'll change in the pool house, Shelley said, pulling Bella with her. Once they changed, Bella couldn't help but stare at Shelley Keno's body, 'cause it was perfect in every way. She put everyone else to shame. She had not even 1 ounce of flab or fat, but she wasn't skinny. She was muscular, toned, and could model on any fitness magazine. Even her stomach muscles were defined. When they emerged a few minutes later, the place was overflowing with people. Bella's eyes traveled over the multi-tiered deck, the pool, and finally a sand volleyball pit. She'd known the Kenos were extremely wealthy. What she didn't expect was for them to be so down to earth, so real, and Mark's mother was a true treasure, kind and loving and humble. Bella peered toward the ocean and located her son, with a few other kids, down on the beach. She looked up to see Mark coming toward her, a smile on his face. You two look beautiful, he said. You put all the other females to shame. Bella tugged self-consciously on her white gauzy cover-up, which she'd left unbuttoned. It hit her at mid-thigh, and underneath she wore a black bikini. Let's see, Shelley said. I think I'm going to need a few more platters. I'll get them for you, Bella quickly volunteered. Shelley smiled at her. Thanks, hun. That would be great. Mark, why don't you help her? I think I'd like 2 more. There are some on that top shelf in the pantry. Actually, bring as many as there are left. Bella headed around the pool and toward the house with Mark right behind her. She entered through the expansive dining room where the large motorized glass wall had been left open to accommodate traffic. Mark touched his hand to the small of her back. This way, he said, turning her to the left. They walked through the kitchen to the far side, past a smaller dining area with a perfect view of the ocean, until Mark moved forward and opened a set of double doors. The pantry, Bella thought, was big enough to be another room. It housed a large freezer chest and second refrigerator and 2 freestanding stainless steel wire shelving units that held dish sets, industrial pots and pans, and elaborate serving dishes. Bella spotted the platters and stood on her tiptoes and reached over her head. Mark moved up behind her. Let me get those. He reached up and stopped. His eyes fell on her bare shoulder where the cover-up had fallen away. A fresh bruise marked the skin there on the back of her shoulder. He touched her there, and she flinched. How did that happen? He asked, though he knew the answer. She didn't turn around, only bent her head. Whatever are you talking about? She whispered. Bella, I know what's going on in your marriage and in your home. She didn't say anything in response. What could she say? To deny it would be silly. She could feel him behind her. She could feel his warmth and his strength. He'd told her to trust him, and heaven help her, she did. Still, it was so hard to open up. She flinched again when his hand softly brushed over the sore area. You have a bruise here, Bella. I bet you didn't realize it was here. You wouldn't be able to see it in the mirror because you're careful. You're always so careful to make sure that no one sees, to make sure no one knows. But I know, Bella, and I want to help you. She shook her head. I don't want your pity. I'm not sure you can call it pity, Bella, but I do hurt for you and for Logan because I care about you. Why? You barely know me. His hand moved over the bruise again, and she felt such warmth she almost swooned. He cares about me, she thought. Maybe he wouldn't care if he knew the fantasies she'd had about him with her being a married woman. Having him so close made her entire body tingle and come alive. She was so tempted to lean back against him, lean herself against all that hard warmth. I know you well enough, Bella. I've known you for 2 years. I know you're sweet and shy. I know you're a wonderful mother, and I can't stand the thought of that idiot husband of yours hurting you. She couldn't help it. The tears welled up and over. He turned her around to face him and lifted her chin. Oh, hell, I've made you cry. Oh, sweetheart, I never meant to make you cry. His thumbs brushed away at the tears, but his eyes focused where one tear had run into the corner of her mouth, and before he knew what he was doing, he used his thumb to brush at the moistness. When Bella didn't push him away, he lowered his head and touched his lips to hers, softly, gently. A new flood of tears hit his thumbs, and he pulled away. Bella, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I'm a weak man. Don't cry. Shh. She wiped her own tears on the back of her hands and gave a soft laugh. Please don't apologize, really. Lately, I cry at the drop of a hat. I don't know what's wrong with me. Must be some kind of hormonal change. Then you forgive me for kissing you? You mean for making me feel like a woman for the first time in forever? Yeah, you're forgiven. He smiled. We need to talk, Bella. This is hardly the time and place, but sometime today, before you go home, we need to find some time alone and have a talk. She nodded. Maybe it's time. He blew out a breath in relief. She smiled sadly at him. It's a thumb mark. Huh? She touched her shoulder. It's a thumb mark. He pinches down hard on my shoulder, like the Vulcan death grip or something, to get me to do what he wants me to do. Mark's jaw clenched so hard he could barely speak. He brushed a hand gently over her cheek. Well, what was he trying to get you to do? She shivered. He wanted me down on my knees. I get it, he said, cutting her off. When did this happen? Yesterday morning. Why? It's not important right now. We have a lot to talk about. There you two are, Shelley said, standing in the doorway of the pantry. Oh, sorry, Mom, Mark uttered. Bella quickly swiped at her eyes once more to make sure no tears remained. Sorry, Miss Keno, we got to talking. It's Shelley, remember? Okay, hand me those platters, Mark. New scene. For the second time in a week, Logan laughed so hard the soda he'd been drinking came out of his nose, which brought on another round of laughter from the group of kids. Jojo slapped him on the back several times. I don't think that's helping, young Eric said from his place in the sand. Well, at least I didn't toss him into the ocean, Jojo said. Eric shrugged. I figure if I can't go swimming, I want someone to do it for me. So, how you feeling anyway? Alan, a kid who lived just down the beach, asked. Eric shrugged. I feel okay, I guess. Feeling pretty bad about getting surprised like that, though. I never saw it coming. Well, you were distracted by, things, Logan said, cupping his hands over his chest, which received another round of laughter. That would be 2 things, Jojo corrected. Shoot, speaking of, things, look who decided to come down from the pool, Eric said. The boys turned to watch a group of 5 girls coming down toward the beach. Who do you want, Eric? Jojo asked. You're injured, so you get to pick first. I'll take one of the blondes, he said quickly. I'll take Maya, Jojo said. Logan frowned. Maya was a Polynesian girl from their class and the only girl he knew at the party. Who do you want? Jojo asked. Logan shrugged. Whoever will have me. No, man, that ain't the way it goes, Eric said. You gotta have some confidence. You gotta step up and decide which one you want, like you did the other night. I don't know any of them. Well, neither do I, Eric said. And you didn't know those girls at the pizza place either. Okay, well, the other blonde is cute. That's who I was going to take, Alan complained. Well, you should have spoke up, Jojo informed him. My friend Logan claims the blonde. Logan started to tell Alan he could have the girl, but the females arrived about that time. Hey, Eric, they said, all five focusing in on the wounded young man. We heard you got attacked by some skate punks and ended up in the hospital. Are you feeling better? Eric grinned. Better now that you're all here. Jojo rolled his eyes, more at the girl's interest in Eric rather than at his cousin's stupid line, though he wasn't really jealous. Eric always got a lot of attention because of his parents. Jojo knew it bothered his cousin to not ever know if someone liked him just for him. So, what are you girls up to? Jojo asked. They giggled. We just thought we'd come on down and play in the waves. That's cool, Jojo said before he looked directly at his girl of choice. Hey, Maya. She smiled. Hey, come on in with me and I'll find you a shell. Okay. Jojo glanced over at Logan. Maya, I know you already know Logan from class, but the rest of you, this is Logan. He's a good friend of mine and Eric's. Logan looked up at Jojo as if he were a god. The girls stepped forward and introduced themselves to Logan. Oh, and this is Alan, another friend of mine. Jojo waited while everyone said hi to everyone else. So let's go swimming, he said, taking Maya by the hand. Logan could only look on with admiration. He glanced over his shoulder. Eric had already struck up a conversation with one of the blondes, so Logan smiled at the other one. You want to go swimming? She smiled. Sure. They walked side by side into the water. New scene. Have either of you seen Bella? Both Shelley and Eric nodded toward the beach. A lone figure in a black bikini walked slowly along the beach. The sun was beginning to set, and everyone else had come in, eaten their fill, and settled down to playing pool games. Most of the adults lounged around the pool and at the bar, enjoying the Keno's hospitality. Mark nodded. Well, I guess that means it's time. He glanced back at his mother and stepfather. Eric nodded. Be gentle, but firm. Mark blew out a breath and straightened his shoulders. I'll do my best. Shelley watched her son as he walked down toward the beach. He's in love with her, she said softly. Eric nodded. It's a tough situation. Shelley sighed. When she'd cornered her husband about Bella earlier, he told her about the state of affairs. Bella was such a gentle soul. Shelley hoped Mark would be able to talk some sense into her. So many women just don't understand or maybe don't believe that there are ways out of bad situations. Bella looked up as Mark approached, her hands wrung together nervously. She smiled at him, and he tried to keep his eyes on her face, but he had to sneak just one glance at her bikini-clad body. She was slim, pale, ethereal. There were no traces of the child she'd once carried. Her coloring actually reminded him of Jojo's mother, who'd come so quickly into his life and left just as fast. Only Beth's hair, black hair, hadn't been natural. Water cold? Mark asked. It's freezing, she replied, and walked toward an outcropping of rocks to grab her cover-up. He watched her as she put it on, then looked up at him expectantly. Let's walk, he said uncomfortably. Turning silently, they headed south away from the house. Mark drew a breath and plunged in. He didn't have a lot of time. I know that you're being abused. Bella nodded. I realize that we've established that, so what else is there to say? Poor Bella? No. What I'm here to say is it can't go on. Well, I'll just run home and tell that to Gordon. Bella, don't be defensive. Please, I'm here to help you. She sighed. I know. I'm sorry. I guess it's just my way of venting. Do you love him? Silence ensued for several moments. I did once. He's killed any feelings I may have had for him. Mark nodded and blew out a breath, realizing he'd been holding it as he waited for that all-important answer. How long has it been going on? A long time. He waited, silently urging her to elaborate. At first, it was just a slap or a push, a yank on my hair, and then he'd apologize and I'd forgive him. Logan was just a baby then, and I don't know why it started. I'm still not quite sure what I did to make him turn on me. You didn't do anything. It's not your fault. It's him. It's all him. Well, I gained a lot of weight with Logan. I think it embarrassed him. He circled around in front of her and took her by the shoulders. Did you hear what I said? It's not your fault. You have to make him responsible for his actions. Women gain weight in childbirth. He has no right to hit you, for whatever reason. She nodded. Well, mentally, I know that. Emotionally, I keep thinking if I'd only done this right or that right. He ran his hands up and down her arms and shook his head. It's him, Bella. It doesn't matter what you do right. He'll always find a reason. It's him. So, when did it escalate? She sighed. The first really bad time was Christmas Day, when Logan was 2. I was so tired and I just didn't want to have sex. And he beat me. He beat me and he raped me and he blackened my eye and he put stripes on my back with his belt and he loosened 2 of my teeth. And I stayed hidden for 2 weeks waiting for the bruises to go away. He had to go to a special New Year's party and I couldn't go looking like I did, so he went alone. And he didn't come home that night and I knew he went home with another woman. How did you know? Well, he made no effort to hide it. I could smell her perfume on his tux. He had her glove in his pocket. He talked about her, about the things she did to him, and told me from now on I would be doing those same things. He worked hard. He deserved to be treated like a man. Oh, Bella. She shrugged. If Logan was 2 then, that was about 9 years ago, why have you stayed? I have no choice. About 2 weeks after my parents' funeral, Gordon and I had a big fight. He hurt me pretty bad, and when I woke the next morning, I realized he could possibly kill me. So I told him I was leaving him, and I started packing my bags, and then I went into Logan's room to get him up. She stopped and shivered. And, Mark urged gently, he was gone. I turned around in a panic, and Gordon was standing there by Logan's bedroom door, his arms folded across his chest, smiling in that way that told me he was enjoying my pain. I screamed at him. I told him to give me my son, and he said I'd never see him again. I went running through the house, searched everywhere, but he wasn't there. I begged and I cried, and I actually got on my knees and promised that I'd never again try to leave him. He finally gave in. He made a phone call, and a few minutes later a man drove up to the house and brought Logan to the door. She looked up at Mark. Can you understand now why I can't leave? Well, Logan's not a baby anymore. He can hardly hide an 11-year-old boy who doesn't want to be hidden. He said if I tried to leave him, he'd take Logan from me. You don't know him. He's powerful. I don't have a choice but to stay. You have a choice, Bella. When she started to disagree, he asked another question. If I told you that we can get you out and you won't lose custody of Logan, would you be willing to leave him? She shook her head. Why not? Mark asked angrily. He'd kill me. I know it. He'll kill me or have someone kill me. And then what would happen to Logan? Bella, he won't kill you. There are places you can go where he'll never find you. And what then, Mark? Am I supposed to run and hide the rest of my life? No. Then we prosecute. She backed away from him, her eyes wide. Prosecute? A short burst of laughter escaped her. Prosecute Gordon? I have no proof. First, he'd humiliate me, and then he'd kill me. And believe me when I say I don't care about the humiliation, but I do care about Logan. And so do I. What do you think he's going through? He watches his father hurt his mother, and he feels helpless, and he feels guilty. Bella's head bowed, and Mark came to her and placed his hand on her shoulder. She looked up, the tears now flowing. I don't know what to do, she muttered. I just don't know. He pulled her against his chest and let her cry while he held her tight and ran his hand back and forth over her back. Leaning down, he kissed her temple and murmured comforting words until she finally quieted. There is a way out, sweet Bella, he said softly. We'll find a way. She shook her head. I'm afraid. I'm afraid too. I'm afraid that one day I'll get a call telling me you're dead. And I don't want you to die, Bella, because I care for you. Do you understand what I'm saying? I care deeply for you. Her eyes met his. You do? She asked, as if coming out of a trance. I do. Isn't it obvious? I don't know. How can you? Because, Bella, you're a sweet, kind, gentle, intelligent, beautiful woman, one who deserves happiness, and I want to give you that. Her mouth fell open. Don't look so worried. I don't intend to do anything that would jeopardize you in any way. I do, however, intend to get you out of the danger you're in, and we'll see what happens after that. She looked out over the water as the sun went down. The surface of the water was as orange as the sky, and suddenly she turned to him, eyes wide, as if she had a great secret to tell. I think about you sometimes. He searched her face, feeling suddenly delighted by her confession. You do? What do you mean? He asked with a smile. I wonder what it would be like to have you coming home to me at dinner time instead of Gordon. I know it's naughty, but I can't help it. I've watched you in class. You're so kind and patient. You're so calm. He tried not to let what she said affect him too much. She was desperately in need of a protector, and so those feelings may be somewhat misconstrued. Still, it was a nice fantasy, and he decided to play with it. Oh, I'd come home and take a deep breath and say, man, oh man, something smells good. And then I'd lift up the lid of the pot that's simmering and steal a taste. And then you'd smack my hand and fuss at me and I'd laugh. His voice deepened. And I'd pull you close and kiss you. She swallowed, keeping her eyes on his. And you would turn off the stove and pull me into our bedroom, and we would make love until there would be a knock on the door, and Jojo and Logan would say they're hungry. Bella laughed. Smiling, he took her hand. So, Bella, fantasies aside, we have to come to a decision about what we're going to do to get you out of your situation. Well, nothing's changed, Mark. I don't see how I can leave. Geez, Bella, I'm telling you there are ways. Just give me the go-ahead, and I'll find a place for you. I'll go to court, and I'll get a restraining order. We'll have a hearing over child custody. We can show that Logan may be in danger, and there are things that you don't know about that are happening to gather evidence against him. I'm not allowed to disclose those things right now, but you have to trust me. I do trust you, Mark. She stepped away and put a hand to her forehead. What do you mean, gathering evidence against him? Who? I'm not at liberty to say right now, but someone is, Bella. I'm not the only one who can see what's going on. There will be evidence. Just tell me you want out, and I'll get you out. She stood, thinking for a time, everything rushing around in her brain. Someone is gathering evidence against Gordon. How could they do that without being present in their home? And does Gordon know it? And does he think it's her that's arranged it? Could she really be able to leave him and retain custody of Logan? Does she dare even hope? She gazed up into Mark's kind eyes. Okay, just let me think about it. Let me think. Give me a few days. I don't want to rush into anything. I've survived this long. I'll survive another few days. He blew out a breath. Well, think long and hard, Bella. You leave him and you come to me for protection. I swear I won't let anything happen to you or Logan. I may not be a big, powerful attorney like he is, but I have a powerful family, and we have as many friends in high places as he does. She smiled at him. You've given me so much. Well, I haven't given you anything yet. You've given me hope. She looked up as Logan came running down to the beach. Mom, Logan cried, panic in his voice. Mom, Dad is on the Keno's house phone. He said he tried to reach you several times, but you're not answering your cell phone, and he wants to speak to you. Oh, no, Bella said, her chin quivering. I haven't even thought about my phone. It's in my purse in the pool house. Bella, Mark began. No, she said quickly, cutting him off. I have to go. Logan, get your things. We have to go right now. Mark watched her run toward the house. He dug in his pocket and pulled out his phone and dialed Joey. Hey, she's on the way home, and he's angry with her for not answering her phone. She's panicked and she's scared. I know. Did you speak with her? Yes. She says she now has hope, but she wants to think about things. Damn it, Joey. He could kill her. I got it, Mark. It won't be tonight. And that is the end of chapter 4.